the trust that is inherent to the system relies on the assumption that decentralization is everywhere, in value creation, in verification of the information that is stored in the blockchains, and at the end of the day, also in the governance of these systems, that I'm going to say in a second. This is what the first and second generation of blockchain-based systems was trying to achieve when they were conceived. Let us look into what I was talking at the beginning, that is the process of value exchange. One thing that was already recognized by an economist, an Italian economist, a professor in Switzerland here in the 19th century, Alfredo Pareto, was the fact that all our economies are very unequal. And they are unequal exactly because of the fact that a process that you may know just by the name, that is the rich gets richer. And this is not just the process of that the fact that a person that has 1 million Swiss francs in their bank account is going to produce, for example, more interest just by depositing these accounts into some investment strategy than someone that has 10,000 Swiss francs in their bank account. It is also the fact that the person that is richer is going to increase their wealth at a much larger rate than a person that has a lower one. This economic process pervades economy. Okay, it's not something that we can select or not to happen. We can only select it through, for example, centralized policies that enable redistribution of wealth. As I said, if you let this process untamed, the process is just going to increase wealth inequality and concentration of power in few actors. Okay, this is just a fact, and it is out of a mathematical property in the way people accumulate money, and it has been observed everywhere. Actually, as part of our research, we also see that it has been also happening for the last decade in all blockchain-based systems, and we cannot evade that if we do not have active policies to do that. The economic models that have been applied to cryptocurrencies are only based on economic incentives. And once again, if we have economic incentives that are traditional ones, the ones that we learned in textbooks of game theory, we will have the same process of wealth accumulation going on and more centralization. Centralization is going to take place not only at the level of wealth accumulation, but also in an increasing range of blockchain-based systems. We will have also an increased, for example, voting power, decisional power of fewer and fewer actors. And remember what I said a few minutes ago, blockchain-based systems can only work and be trustworthy if they are decentralized. But it is just the set of incentives that are placed on them what creates their own dismissal in the long run. Okay? And where are we heading to? We were thinking about data and the value that data has. The nice thing about blockchain-based systems is that in many of them you can analyze transaction by transaction every single economic exchange that took place there. You can also look into decision processes that took place inside of these systems and see how centralized or not governance is. If I find a possibility to escape this a weakening spiral, just to say it in mildly, in this kind of systems, is because actually the people that is in charge, or let's say pursuing the development of these platforms, sees that this is actually a problem for the long-term success of these systems. One thing that is also fundamental in these systems is we say that people wanted to have a decentralized value creation. Actually, when you look at the systems, you also see that they are increasingly centralized in terms of who is able to create new assets in the system. But also another point that is specifically important is the fact that anonymity was very important when the systems were conceived. Okay, and what happens in blockchains is that, as I was saying before, all the economic transactions are perfectly stored there, and many of them leave limpid traces of who was exchanging assets with whom. And the level of anonymity that actually you obtain in these blockchain-based systems is very, very low. Okay, and this is simply because of the originated on the fact that there are many people inside of these systems that are not trying to anonymize themselves. So everybody that is trying to have an anonymous behavior in the systems is simply exposed by the fact that everything that they are doing is an outlier inside of the behavior of everybody else in the system. There is a lot of learning that we have been having for the past few years in all the wrong design choices that the first generation of blockchain-based systems were having. And we're building new layers of knowledge in new generations that are being built. But this also means that there are few important issues that have been tackled, must be tackled when people is looking at blockchain-based systems that are going to be developed. On the one hand is escaping from this technocratic view that a fixed set of incentives, for example, a fixed design, is going to work forever inside of these blockchains. And I say two examples here. When we're looking at our economic system or at our economy, we know that in many cases, central banks, policymakers do a lot of missteps when designing policy. However, they know something for sure, which is that both the way in which the economy works and the exogenous factors that affect our economy are going to change over time, and you will have to adapt policy. Most of the blockchain-based systems that exist so far, not all, but most, rely on a very technocratic approach in which they are based on a fixed set of rules. I have a sticker at home that has the Bitcoin logo and says rules, not rulers, signaling this anarchic point of view that many in the Bitcoin community have. But this is exactly the dismissal of this kind of approach, because we have been seeing that the fact that it has a fixed set of rules allows for people to game the system and allows to make it a very good speculative asset, but not one that you can use as a means of exchange, and cannot create a long-term trust in a technological solution, simply because of the fact that there is going to be a point in which everybody will learn how to game that scenario. The other thing is, therefore, one thing that is particularly important is having an adaptive system to the changing environmental conditions, changing conditions under which we are working inside of our economy, for example. And the second point is related to this, that's having a truly decentralized governance. Because we wanted to escape a system in which Visa, MasterCard, and a few others dictate the way in which we can exchange value. And at the end, we are trusting platforms in which unaccountable people, very few actually, because once again, the level of contributions of different actors to, for example, the source code and decision-making processes in open source software as well is very unequal. So we have very few unaccountable individuals that are deciding the fate of very large-scale projects. And once again, a genuine democracy in this system is something that is missing. But how do you do that? There is no way and this is a very interesting area of research, there is no way in which we can link identities in the real world, people, to the digital twins that you were mentioning before, because there is a very simple way in which you can clone yourself in a digital environment, okay? And this is something that can give you a lot of power in specific systems. However you want to do it, you will always find a way to once again game the system. And the only way in which you can avoid people gaming the system is adapting to the changing nature of our human behavior. Okay? The last thing that I want to say is that we have been only looking into the tip of the iceberg with this kind of blockchain-based platform, because the only thing that we were looking there was at economic exchanges that once again only replicate the way in which we have been doing economic exchanges in our daily lives. Okay? When we have to think, if you ever use a cryptocurrency, you will see that if I want to send Deepak 2 bitcoins, he will receive 2 bitcoins minus the fees. And this is just the same thing that happens when I go here and with my credit card I pay for a bottle of beer. Okay? It's the same process. There is a conservation, if you think of this in very abstract terms, there is a conservation of the monetary exchange that is just a social norm that emerged at the time in which coins were physical. And if I gave you 1 Swiss franc in a coin, you received also 1 Swiss franc. There is no reason to think of this in a digital environment. And this is something that has been limiting tremendously the innovation in the way of thinking new incentives. Because we should not be only incentivized by a traditional means that has been only creating more and more inequality. And there are other things like, for example, creating the creation of social groups that are targeted towards a common objective that can think of exchanging value in completely novel ways, and the digital a digital platform that like a blockchain is something that enables that. And for the moment, the only thing that has been doing is replicating what we have been doing for the last 4,000 years. And I think that this is something that is going to be particularly interesting in the next generation.